Imagine walking into a room where a 3-week-old kitten, barely able to keep its balance, is placed directly in front of a massive Rottweiler. This is a dog that has never encountered a cat in its entire life, let alone been socialized with smaller, fragile animals. By every rule of nature, every predatory instinct coded into that dog's DNA, this situation should end in tragedy. Your breath catches. You braced yourself for the worst, but then something extraordinary happens. The dog doesn't growl. It doesn't bare its teeth. Instead, it slowly lowers its massive head, lies down on the floor, and begins licking the tiny kitten with slow, incredibly careful strokes. Within minutes, the kitten crawls between the predator's giant front legs, curls up, and falls asleep. It makes you stop and wonder. Let me ask you something. What if everything we thought we knew about the ruthless boundary between predator and prey is fundamentally wrong? Imagine a wild animal, driven by millions of years of survival instincts, looking at a completely different species and instantly deciding to become its protector. When the research team saw this, they assumed it might just be a fluke, so they tried it again. They introduced a baby rabbit, then a helpless duckling, and eventually an orphaned fawn. Every single time, the result was exactly the same. The Rottweiler relaxed its body, softened its posture, and offered gentle comfort with a mouth that could easily kill in a single reflex. This dog wasn't trained to do this. There was no reward waiting for it. The question that left the researchers completely baffled was how this animal, with zero exposure to these species, could look at each one of them and instantly arrive at the exact same conclusion. This is a baby, and I must not hurt it. What is actually happening inside the brain to override the primal urge to hunt? The answer takes us deep into the hidden mechanics of evolution, revealing a biological secret shared by almost every mammal on Earth. We often comfort ourselves with the idea that compassion is a uniquely human achievement, a sign of our higher moral standing. When we see a dog being gentle with a baby bird, or a cat adopting an orphaned rabbit, we tend to dismiss it as a fluke, a product of human training, or merely a glitch in their programming. We look at the animal kingdom through a deeply flawed lens, assuming that wild creatures are nothing more than biological machines driven entirely by raw, unthinking aggression or simple conditioned reflexes. It is the exact same mistake we make when we observe a dog tracking a scent across a field. We assume they simply smell things better than we do, that their noses are just sharper, more sensitive versions of our own. But science proves that our conventional understanding is completely wrong, or at the very least, woefully incomplete. A dog doesn't just experience a stronger scent, they literally smell time itself. They can detect the fading molecules of an event that happened hours ago, or the fresh scent of something approaching from down the street, constructing a vivid chronological map of the past, present, and future out of thin air. In the exact same way, an animal's response to a helpless infant is not a random mistake or a trick of domestication. It is a highly sophisticated, deeply embedded biological detection system that has been running quietly in the background of the mammalian brain for millions of years. When a predator looks at a vulnerable newborn, it isn't experiencing a sudden burst of human-like morality. It is responding to a universal, cross-species toolkit of evolutionary signals that are designed to bypass conscious thought entirely. We are not the authors of empathy. We are simply sharing a profound, ancient software that was built long before humans ever walked the earth. To truly understand why this happens, we have to look past the surface and examine the rigid mathematical geometry of nature. Every infantile feature looks almost identical across the entire mammalian spectrum. Whether it is a human infant, a tiny puppy, or a baby seal, the proportions follow a strict evolutionary blueprint. The eyes sit remarkably large for the skull, the forehead pushes noticeably outward, and the head itself is disproportionately massive compared to the rest of the body. These physical traits are not random aesthetic coincidences. They are powerful, unignorable biological signals designed to trigger an immediate neurological shift. To map out exactly what occurs inside the mind when these signals are received, researchers at the University of Oxford conducted a groundbreaking study. They placed human participants inside a brain scanner and flashed photographs of baby faces before them. The exposure was incredibly brief, lasting a mere 140 milliseconds. To put that into perspective, 140 milliseconds is faster than the blink of an eye. It is a time frame so rapid that the conscious mind has not even fully processed or identified what the eyes are looking at. Yet, without fail, the reward center of the brain instantly lit up like a Christmas tree. The neurological hardware was treating those infant faces as an immediate priority, forcing an instinctive urge to move toward, protect, and nurture the creature before the conscious mind could even voice an opinion. The decision to care was finalized well before the subject fully realized what they were observing. And, crucially, this hardwired reflex did not require the face to be human. The abstract geometric proportions alone were enough to hijack the neural pathways. This is a universal operating system, an ancient biological law that governs survival. It operates on a level of instinct as fundamental as temporal resolution, the rapid rate at which an animal processes visual changes in time, or the profound psychological attachment dynamics we observe in a classic secure base test. The brain isn't analyzing identity. It is executing a command. While we cannot easily place a wild predator inside a modern brain scanner, we can observe this deep-seated evolutionary programming through their raw, unfiltered actions in the wilderness. Consider a remarkable event recorded by a safari guide named Ryan Soy in Kruger National Park. A wild female leopard had just successfully hunted and killed an adult baboon in a marula tree. It was a standard, routine hunt driven by basic predatory survival. However, as the dead baboon fell to the ground, a 2-week-old infant baboon detached from its mother's body. What happened next completely defied standard biological logic. Instead of consuming the defenseless infant as an easy snack, the leopard descended the tree, approached the baby, and gently picked it up in her massive jaws. She didn't use a killing bite. She utilized a highly specialized carry bite, applying just enough precise pressure to hold the fragile creature without breaking its skin. She carried the tiny baboon into a dense thicket, laid it down, and immediately began grooming its fur with long, slow strokes. When the cold night arrived, the infant crawled toward her belly and attempted to nurse. Even though the leopard's body could not provide milk or the constant life-saving warmth the baby desperately needed, she stayed by its side until dawn, even defending it from approaching hyenas. From a strictly selfish evolutionary standpoint, every single calorie she expended protecting this unrelated creature was completely wasted. Yet, she did it anyway. This universal mammalian hardware is triggered not just by sight, but by sound. In 2014, researchers at the University of Winnipeg discovered that distress cries across entirely different species share a shockingly similar acoustic frequency. When they hid speakers in the wild and played the cries of baby fur seals to wild deer or human baby cries to marmots, the adult animals rushed to the speaker every single time. This instant, undeniable rescue reflex mirrors the groundbreaking behavioral experiments of the past, like the famous Snowball the Parrot studies on universal rhythm, Kellogg's cross-rearing experiments, or Dmitry Belyev's decades-long silver fox domestication research. The animal brain doesn't stop to ask who the baby belongs to. It simply hears the universal frequency of vulnerability and answers the call. However, nature is rarely a one-sided fairy tale of universal compassion. And this is where the current limits of our evolutionary science become starkly apparent. The detection system that recognizes an infant is incredibly reliable, but the behavioral loop that follows it is not. While the sight of a baby triggers protective care in a leopard, that exact same recognition can lead somewhere profoundly dark in other species. Consider the chilling phenomenon of infanticide. For over 50 years, researchers in India have documented male langur monkeys systematically hunting down and killing the unweaned infants within a newly conquered troop. This is not a failure to recognize a baby. It is a brutal calculation based on that very recognition. The male knows exactly what the infant is, but because the baby belongs to a rival, its presence keeps the females reproductively unavailable. By eliminating the infants, he forces the females back into estrus to sire his own genetic lineage. We see this exact same dark boundary across the animal kingdom. Male lions routinely slaughter cubs after taking over a pride. Dolphins attack calves, and even female chimpanzees have been observed killing and consuming the infants of rival mothers. In these grim scenarios, the universal infantile signals do not trigger a desire to nurture. Instead, they trigger a hyper-aggressive drive for genetic dominance and competition. Even more baffling to modern science is how easily this ancient neural hardware can be completely hijacked and weaponized by parasites. The common cuckoo has evolved to exploit the mammalian and avian caregiving reflex to a terrifying degree. A single cuckoo chick, after tossing the host's real eggs out of the nest, can mimic the collective begging cries of an entire nest full of hungry chicks. The host parents are trapped in a sensory illusion. Their brains are so overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of the auditory signal that they continue to feed a giant, alien creature 3 times their size. Current science can map the neurons firing in these moments, but we still struggle to explain the deep, underlying mystery of why the exact same evolutionary trigger can produce the ultimate act of sacrifice in one creature and the ultimate act of cruelty in another. So, after looking at all the evidence, we finally arrive back at our original question. Do they actually know it's a baby? The answer is an undeniable, resounding yes. They know. The universal geometry of a tiny face, the distinct acoustic frequency of a desperate cry, and the fragile rhythm of an infant's movements are recognized across almost every species line in existence. But what happens immediately after that recognition is never guaranteed. As we have seen, some creatures look at a helpless baby from another species, and their profound, ancient instinct to protect kicks in instantly. Others look at the exact same vulnerable creature and choose to ruthlessly exploit it for genetic dominance or survival. It is a dual reality driven by the cold, unyielding mechanics of millions of years of evolution. This realization forces us to re-examine our own place in the natural world. For centuries, we have constructed entire philosophies around the comforting idea that compassion, empathy, and the instinct to protect the helpless are uniquely human virtues, proof of our higher moral standing. But the natural world shattered that vanity. A wild predator went gentle. A fierce competitor chose protection. The next time you watch a dog gently lower its head to greet a much smaller animal, or the next time you see a domesticated pet offer comfort to a creature it should naturally hunt, remember that you are not witnessing a bizarre anomaly or a cute trick. You are looking directly at a profound biological software that is much older, larger, and deeper than humanity itself. We are not the authors of kindness. We are simply sharing a universal mammalian heritage. Perhaps the most unsettling, yet beautiful part of all of this is that the line separating human morality from animal instinct doesn't really exist. Nature is neither entirely cruel nor entirely soft. It is an intricate mirror of our own complex souls, capable of the ultimate sacrifice and the ultimate cruelty at the exact same time.